We value your time. The iPhone Fold is not a rumour in the usual sense. It is a strategic inevitability. Apple will not release a foldable to join the trend. It will release one to end the awkward era of foldables that look futuristic but feel compromised. If Apple ships an iPhone Fold, it is because Apple believes it can finally make a foldable that behaves like a normal iPhone when closed, feels like a genuinely useful device when opened, and still survives real life without making you babysit it. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what foldables have actually been so far. The last few years have produced devices that are impressive in concept, expensive in practice, and almost always defined by a list of small compromises that add up. The crease that catches the light. The soft inner screen that scratches if you look at it wrong. The hinge that loosens over time. The thickness and weight that make your pocket feel like it is carrying a small brick. The software that is sometimes a stretched phone app, sometimes a shrunk tablet app, and rarely the thing the hardware is quietly begging for. Apple has watched this entire category without making a move. That silence is not disinterest. It is standards. Apple's biggest advantage is not that it can invent new categories. It is that it can take a messy category and make the first version that normal people actually want to live with. That requires two kinds of engineering at once. Materials engineering to fix the physical problems, and platform engineering to make the software feel native rather than adapted. Start with the single most important component in any foldable: the hinge. Every foldable phone is a hinge with a screen attached. The hinge decides whether the crease is tolerable, whether dust destroys it, whether the screen is put under uneven stress, whether it folds smoothly, whether it stays aligned, and whether it feels premium or feels like a clever toy. Most foldables use a hinge that bends the display over a relatively tight radius. The tighter the bend, the more stress concentrates along the fold line. Stress over time becomes wear, and wear becomes a crease you can see, then a crease you can feel, and then, in the worst case, a failure. Apple's approach, based on its patent trail and the way Apple tends to solve mechanical problems, likely aims at distributing that stress. The concept is simple. Instead of forcing the display to fold sharply, you guide it through a wider curve. A wider curve means less stress on the same material. Less stress means less permanent deformation. Less deformation means less crease. This is not magic. It is physics, precision engineering, and manufacturing tolerances that are brutally expensive until they are suddenly not. This is why Apple is probably waiting. Foldables are not only hard to design, they are hard to manufacture consistently at scale. Apple does not ship a product if only some units are excellent. Apple ships when almost every unit is excellent. A foldable hinge that is perfect in the lab but inconsistent across mass production is not a product. It is a liability. Then there is the inner display itself. Foldables need a screen that is both flexible and durable. That is a difficult combination because flexibility usually means thinner layers, and thinner layers usually means more fragility. The inner screen must resist micro scratches, pressure marks, and the slow fatigue that comes from folding and unfolding thousands of times. Many foldables today use a combination of ultra-thin glass and protective polymer layers. It works, but the feel is different. Slightly softer, slightly less glass-like, slightly less confident. Apple will not accept slightly. If you are paying flagship money, Apple wants the touch experience to feel like an iPhone, not like a clever workaround. So Apple's target is likely an inner display that feels rigid enough to be familiar, yet flexible enough to fold without damage, while also minimizing optical distortion. In plain terms, it needs to look and feel normal, even though it is anything but. The crease is a huge part of this. People talk about the crease like it is a small aesthetic flaw. It is more than that. A visible crease is the device constantly reminding you that it is compromised. A tactile crease is the device constantly reminding you while you scroll, type, and swipe. Apple's brand is built on removing those reminders. So if Apple cannot make the crease essentially disappear in everyday lighting and everyday use, the iPhone Fold does not ship. Now zoom out to the overall design. There are two main foldable forms. The book fold, where a phone opens like a book into a small tablet, and the flip fold, where a phone folds in half to become smaller. Apple could eventually do both. But the first true iPhone Fold that matters is almost certainly the book style. Why? Because the iPhone already fits in your pocket. Folding it smaller is not transformative for most people. Folding it bigger is. A book-style iPhone. Fold would aim for two lives that both feel complete. Closed, it must behave like a normal iPhone. Normal aspect ratio, normal camera use, normal one-handed operation, normal durability, normal pocket feel. Open, it must become a new canvas that is worth unfolding for. Reading, email, documents, maps, photos, editing, video, multitasking. Not as a gimmick, but as a behaviour you naturally fall into because it genuinely makes the task better. This is where Apple's ecosystem matters. Apple already owns the category of small tablets with iPad mini, and it already owns high-end tablet workflows with iPad Pro. Apple knows exactly what people do on a tablet. It also knows exactly what people refuse to do on a tablet because it feels like too much effort. The iPhone Fold sits between those behaviours. It has to make opening the device feel effortless and make the open state feel immediately productive. But there is a trap. A foldable can easily become neither thing. Too thick and heavy to be a comfortable phone. Too narrow or oddly proportioned to be a comfortable tablet. Apple's design goal is likely to avoid extremes. It will not chase the biggest inner screen. It will chase the most useful inner screen. Expect Apple to pick dimensions that make common tasks feel right. A book like reading width. A split screen that fits two real apps, not two cramped views. A keyboard size that does not make your thumbs hate you. A video canvas that makes sense without massive letterboxing. This is the Apple way. Not maximum specs. Maximum usability. Next is the part most people underestimate. Software. Hardware is only half the product. Foldable software is hard because it must fluidly transition between states without breaking your brain. If you are writing an email on the outer screen, then open the device. The app should expand naturally, maintain context, and offer new layout options without making you feel like you have changed devices. When you close it again, it should shrink back without losing your place. Apple is uniquely positioned here because it controls iOS, the chip, and the app ecosystem expectations. It can provide developers with a small number of design patterns that feel premium and consistent. It can also enforce those patterns over time because iPhone developers follow Apple's platform conventions more closely than most Android developers do. And Apple has already been preparing. For years, iPad and iPhone apps have been pushed towards responsive layouts. Widgets, dynamic type, adaptive interfaces, multitasking patterns, and more recently, a more serious attitude towards windowing. None of that proves a foldable is coming, but it does show a platform gradually being hardened for multiple screen sizes and multiple interaction modes. A foldable iPhone also raises input questions. Will Apple support Apple Pencil on a foldable? Possibly, but not guaranteed. Apple will not ship half support. If the inner display is large enough to benefit from Pencil, Apple could make the Fold a bridge device that brings light sketching and annotation into the iPhone world. But Pencil support adds thickness considerations, storage considerations, magnet placement, and durability concerns. If it compromises the phone experience, Apple will skip it on the first generation. Then there is the camera system. Apple will not accept a camera that is meaningfully worse than the top iPhone. But foldables have less internal space, more moving parts, and more structural constraints. The hinge region steals volume. The device must be balanced. The thickness is shared between two halves. The inner frame must be rigid. All of that competes with camera modules. So Apple has a choice. Either make the Fold the absolute top-tier camera phone, which makes it thicker and more expensive, or accept a slight camera step down in exchange for the foldable value. Apple tends to segment. It might position the Fold as a premium device for productivity and media, while the Pro Max remains the pure camera and battery monster. Or Apple might do what Apple sometimes does, and make the Fold the new top, then push the Pro Max to justify itself in other ways. If the Fold becomes real, Apple's entire iPhone lineup reshuffles around it. Battery is another constraint. Foldables have more screen area. More screen area means more power. You can partly solve this with new display tech and new chips, but physics is physics. Apple's advantage here is silicon efficiency. Apple can make a foldable that lasts longer than competitors at the same battery size because Apple controls the chip and the OS together. But it still must fit the battery into a chassis that is broken into two halves with a hinge in the middle. That is non-trivial engineering. Durability is where Apple will take the most heat if it gets it wrong. People accept a slab phone as robust. They throw it in a bag. They use it one-handed. They give it to a child for 10 minutes and regret it later. A foldable changes people's anxiety level. If Apple ships a foldable that feels delicate, it fails. Apple has to make the fold feel like an iPhone, not like a fragile gadget. That means protection against dust ingress, hinge reliability, and inner screen resilience. It also means making the open and close action feel satisfying and stable. No wobble, no crunch, no suspicion. The device must train trust through feel alone. Apple understands this. If it cannot deliver that, it waits. Now the big strategic question. Why would Apple do this at all? Because the iPhone has reached a plateau in form. Each generation improves, but the shape is the same. The Fold offers a visible, meaningful reason to upgrade at the high end. It offers a new premium tier without having to invent an entirely new product category. It also offers a bridge into a world where Apple wants more screen time in contexts that are currently owned by iPad, laptop, and even Vision devices. A foldable iPhone can be a content device, a light work device, a travel device, a reading device, and a communication device, all in one. It can expand the iPhone's role without forcing you to buy a second device. That is both a business opportunity and a user value story. Apple likes products that do both. Pricing will be brutal. A first-generation iPhone Fold will almost certainly sit above the Pro Max. In UK terms, that probably means a starting price that feels uncomfortable. It could easily start north of £100 to £800, depending on storage and positioning. Apple will try to avoid an absurd price, but foldables are expensive. The hinge, the display, the yield rates, the additional structural materials, and the assembly complexity all add up. This is why timing matters. Apple will likely wait until suppliers can produce the key components at scale with high yields. Low yields mean high costs and inconsistent quality. Apple will not launch a device that is expensive because it is inefficient to make. It wants expensive because it is premium, not expensive because it is wasteful. So when might it land? If you are looking for a sensible window, think late 2026 into 2027. That is not a prediction carved in stone, but it aligns with a world where Apple has had enough time to mature the hardware, align the software, and secure supply chain capacity. If Apple waits longer, it is because it is still not satisfied with the crease, the hinge, or the durability story. Now imagine the first real iPhone Fold keynote moment. Apple will not sell it as a foldable. Apple will sell it as the first iPhone that adapts to you. They will show a normal iPhone experience. Then they will open it and show a calm, effortless expansion of the interface. Messages becoming a two-column view. Maps becoming a real planning tool. Photos becoming a mini editing studio. A document you can actually read and mark up. A video that feels closer to an iPad experience without carrying an iPad. They will make the act of unfolding feel like adding capability, not like switching modes. And that is the real threat to the rest of the market. If Apple makes the Fold feel like a normal iPhone with a secret second life, people will ask why their slab phone cannot do that. The slab phone will not become obsolete overnight, but the idea of paying top-tier money for a single screen starts to feel less exciting when a two-screen life exists. But there is also a risk. Apple could make the Fold so good that it cannibalizes iPad mini sales. It could complicate the lineup. It could fragment app design. Apple will only do this if it believes it can control those risks. That is why the software and ecosystem readiness matters so much. If the iPhone Fold arrives, the story is not that Apple finally built a foldable. The story is that Apple judged the technology mature enough to bet the iPhone's future on a new form. That tells you how big the internal confidence must be. So here is the practical takeaway. If you are thinking about upgrading soon, and you care about foldables, the next 1 or 2 iPhone cycles might be incremental. The Fold is likely a separate tier that arrives when it is ready, not when the calendar says it should. If you want the first generation, expect it to be expensive and likely limited in supply at launch. If you want the best version, expect the second generation to refine weight, thickness, and cost in the way Apple usually does once it has real user data. The iPhone Fold is not just a new phone. It is Apple signaling that the slab era is no longer the only premium endgame. And if Apple solves the hinge and the crease in a way that feels invisible, the foldable category stops being a niche and becomes the next normal. If you want more deep dives like this, subscribe and stay with Future Forged. If you want to support the channel and get early access and extras, check out the Patreon in the description. If you want the circuit-style merch and the prints, that link is there too. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.